He, him, his, and I want to welcome you to the Engaged Employee Podcast. Our mission is to emphasize the relationship between the employee and the workplace with the goal of enhancing engagement levels to create a more productive and satisfying work environment. While many organizations strive to create a more engaging atmosphere, they often miss the mark by forcing connection with big team building events like axe throwing or escape rooms. Those activities only leave employees with a short-lived sense of belonging. Organizations may also try smaller and more suffocating events like happy hours or group birthday celebrations that their employees feel obligated to attend. As a social connections and business culture coach, I found that to create a stable, engaged, and productive workforce, there needs to be a shift in focus from mandatory fun and manufactured connection towards building trust and authentic conversation. Join me and a guest as we dive into social wellness strategies for the individual employee, techniques for developing interpersonal relationships with coworkers, and even some approaches for leaders to enrich the overall organizational culture. The Engaged Employee Podcast starts now. Hey there, my name is Coach Lee. Welcome to the Engaged Employee Podcast. My guest today is Stephen Jaye. Stephen Jaye is a product manager, a podcast host, and the founder of Reclaim Your Time. Reclaim Your Time is a business that helps people cut down on their unintentional screen time. Isn't that fantastic? He is passionate about helping bring humanity to the next era. I can't wait to ask him about what he means by that. And he strongly believes, more than anything, that we are capable of so much more than we currently see. Our conversation today will be focused on interpersonal relationships between coworkers and colleagues. Stephen, welcome to the Engaged Employee Podcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Yes, it's such a delight. I'm always fascinated to hear about people who are making the world a better place, especially with our connections with other people. And this is a really important topic because arguably people have said the single most reason or the biggest reason why we are not connected is because we are spending too much time on our screens. Social media is ruining our connections with other people. So before we jump all into that and I hear your thoughts, I'd be curious to know, why did you get into this? What is it that you do, rather? And then why did you get into this?
Yeah, so this is something I started observing all the way back in the fall of 2010, which was the first time I would see people show up at bars and other social gatherings and stare at their phones rather
Mm.
than engage with the actual people around them. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I just knew this was not going to be good for humanity. And then over time, I started seeing these terrible mental health outcomes, the anxiety, the depression, the suicide. These numbers start to skyrocket and then skyrocket further during COVID, and thought, something needs to be done about this because it's really, it's preventing us from building deeper connections when we're constantly worried about what's in
Mhm.
front of us, what's on our phone, what notification, any notification, someone liked your Instagram post enough to distract you from having a meaningful conversation with the human being in front of you.
Absolutely. So you've noticed that, and I've been guilty of that, and I'm sure people who are listening have been guilty of that too. But I noticed that I was doing that too. And it's like that exact specific instance where a partner and I went to a bar together and we were looking at our phones instead of talking to each other. And there were
Mhm.
people who had to be 20 years older than us were like, boo, hiss,
Yeah.
don't be on your phone. And they were like, what are you talking about? This is what we do. They're like, no, don't be on your phone. And there was something to that, right? There was something to that. So, I mean, I'm imagining that you don't boo and hiss at your clients. You don't tell them, like, boo, you can't be on the phone. How is it that you help your clients?
So I think booing and hissing is actually one of the worst approaches possible, even if I do quasi understand why someone would do it or feel that way. What my technique is all about positive behavior reinforcement, which means, like, have you ever had someone tell you not to do anything, even if it's drugs or alcohol, and the first thing you'll say is, and do what instead, right? So that's what I say. The same thing about this excessive use of screen time. I think people are going to be far more motivated to change their lives in certain ways if they're actually motivated by a different behavior that's tied to a different life outcome. So I oftentimes like to use some really basic examples that are quite common, and one of those examples would be something along the lines of, I want to get into better shape, I want to feel healthier. And that could either mean going to the gym or doing workouts more often, going outside for bike rides, or it could be just as simple as in the kitchen right there, learning to make quality meals, learning to make meals that are nutritious, that are good for you. And so, what I want to do is, I want you to be able to think of what your life is going to become if you were to stop scrolling, stop wasting your time so much scrolling through, whether it be social media or Netflix or anything else. And if you were to learn a bunch of new recipes, learn a new skill, go to the gym more often, what your life would be like then. Because I think that motivates people a lot more than whether it's booing or hissing, or the internal self shade, the booing and hissing yourself when you kind of pull out your phone and see what your screen time was for that particular day or that particular week.
Yeah, I do like the idea of you not booing and helping other people understand more so what it is that they can do, because often I don't think that, if I think back on my life and my own experiences, then what to do instead was always the question or the concern. I don't know what it is I should be doing. I only know what I'm not supposed to, and that leaves me a world of, fear and uncertainty. I'm not clear about what it is to get the result that I'm looking for. So I don't know what to do. Instead of, I would take it as I was a smoker. So I don't know what to
Mhm.
do instead of smoking. They say, just quit, just quit. What are you talking about? I cigarettes are everywhere, and this is something that's been a habit to me. So giving me an alternative, one of the things that you pointed out was cooking meals. That's really been helpful. I'm doing something with my time and attention instead of just sitting down and letting time pass by. Essentially, that's what happens, I think, when we're scrolling on the internet too. So, as far as, giving people some support and making more meaningful connections, definitely one of the things not to do is to spend so much time disconnected from other people. And you talk about this in your podcast, right? Can you tell us a bit about your podcast? What is it and what do you talk about normally?
So my podcast is called Actions Antidotes, with the tagline, "Your antidote to the mindset that keeps you settling for less." And what I do is, I interview people who are pursuing their passions in life and have made some amount of headway on that. So people who are, either on the path or pretty far along the path of, creating their dream lives. And what I do is to inspire people who feel stuck, who feel, uninspired by the life, to feel like they're what I call living by the script. And of course, living by the script nowadays has become spending, I think what they said is 1.9 hours on YouTube, 1.6 hours on TikTok, and then another zero point 0.9 on Instagram, which is quite a bit. And so through these stories, I tell the stories of people who are doing something a little bit different in their lives, whether they built a business, whether they built a community group, whether they built a fitness challenge, or anything like that. I interview a lot of people who are involved in the people helping business and the coaching business, and people who, help people elevate their lives to different levels and help people, achieve what they really want out of life, as opposed to what the world tells you you're supposed to be or you have to be.
Yeah, I really think it's important to be able to make your own mind up about what you're going to do with your time and your energy. And it does really inspire people to see others who have done that same thing. So that it takes out that fear and that uncertainty about not being able to do the thing I don't know how to do. Like, I'm not scrolling on my phone, so now what? And you have all of these other people who have suggestions, not even suggestions, but experiences that they've had. And if we can paint ourselves in that picture, if we can see ourselves in those shoes, then we'd be able to do that thing and not scroll. So, I mean, I really believe that this is something that's really, really powerful. Um, you know, I'd be curious to know because this is something that everyone has their phone and people look at it all the time. I wonder if you can share some actionable steps for me or anyone else who is trying to not do this, how to do that. If you have any small things that we could use.
So yeah, there's a few things, and I think the most important thing is to identify the common situations in which you end up losing a lot of time to what I call unintentional screen time, which is when you pick up your phone or pull out your computer or TV and you don't know why you're doing it and you're not in control of the content or in control of the amount of time that you're spending on these particular platforms. And one of the most important things you can do is um, just turn off notifications for phones. So like our phone is kind of naturally, the default is to notify you of everything. And I mentioned earlier in the discussion, like a notification that someone likes your Instagram post, right? So now, of course, you're going to make a post on Instagram, you're going to get dozen, two, three, 4 dozen, or if you're really popular, hundreds, thousands of likes. The question you need to ask yourself with the intentionality each time is, do I need to be notified? What do I even need to be notified about? Because if you're not notified, you don't pull up your phone and then spend another 30 minutes scrolling through the thing. And so what I do is I only have notifications turned on for phone calls and text messages. And I'm actually working on finding a technique where I can only get notifications from text messages from numbers I have stored, so I don't get those random notifications. And that's just so that when you actually are engaged with a person or focused on a task at work, which is very important too, you're not suddenly distracted by something that's really not that consequential to your life.
I love this. I love the idea of I'm writing this stuff down. I love the idea of the notifications from just text and phone. My phone is on silent most of the time and I turn it over, but there are some notifications that I would probably like to know about. I'd probably like to know about. And I like the idea that really sticks with me is having notifications from numbers that you have saved because there's so much spam that just goes around that I don't know how to deal with it, so I just silence it all. But as a business owner, I do want to interact with people too. It's just like where is that balance? And I like how you talked about how it impacts your life immediately. It's just consequential. Well, it happens to be for my business, but not Instagram, not Facebook, not TikTok, not those other platforms. They can wait. They can wait until I have focused attention for that. And this is something that I've learned from other people and other experiences that people may have shared with me. And I understand you have a group that's forming to help people talk about those kinds of things, their techniques that they might have. Can you tell us a little more about your group?
Yeah, so essentially my program primarily is a online self-directed program, but there's for people who sign up the program, I'm going to be putting together weekly meetups where people can go and have like group discussions. And those group discussions are powerful because people who talk about ideas such as what notifications I have turned off. I've heard a lot of people in these groups talk about grayscaling their phones or taking some of the color out of it to make it less appealing. All these techniques where I can't possibly store them all just inside of my brain myself. People are going to be trying other things, and different things work for different people. A
Mhm.
technique works for one person, doesn't work for another person. So these Monday night meetups are an opportunity for people to come together and have discussions about our mutual struggle with this, because I do want to convey that these are addictive technologies. They were built to be addictive. And the fact that all of us have fallen for it does not necessarily make us weak people, but we're all in this together, and we can be in this together and discuss what has and hasn't worked in a group setting.
I love this idea that humanity is coming together. You really are a community builder and you want to bring people together, not shame them. This isn't your fault. Essentially, we're learning and we're learning how to unlearn things too.
Mhm.
So how, Stephen, can people learn more about this group that's forming? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you saw my main website, stephen-j.com. My website for my program is actually called www.lessscreentime.com, and that's the website for reclaim your time. All the information for these groups is going to be on that website, as well as how to sign up for the program or even sign up for individual coaching with me if you're up for that price point.
All right, Stephen, I really want to thank you for all the amazing information and your thoughts about making, technology not as prevalent in our lives, being conscious about making a choice of setting it aside and having conversation and connection with another human being. You really are a person who wants to make the world a better place. And it was a pleasure and a joy to talk to you.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much for having me and spreading the word about my mission.
All right, take care. And there you have it, another insightful episode of the Engaged Employee Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the deep dive into the world of employee engagement, leadership, and workplace dynamics. The Engaged Employee Podcast is brought to you by the Patterns of Possibility, where we help people make more meaningful relationships in both their personal and professional life. Before we wrap up, we want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our incredible guests and, of course, our loyal listeners. Your support keeps us motivated to bring you valuable content each week. If you found today's discussion thought-provoking and want to learn more about how we can help you or your organization make more meaningful relationships, go to patternsofpossibility.com and book a friendly conversation with me. Or you can email me your questions at patternsofpossibility@gmail.com. Stay connected with us and engage with fellow listeners by following the Patterns of Possibility on LinkedIn. You can also catch us on YouTube. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell to stay in the loop. And if you prefer the audio version, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Your support means the world to us, and by subscribing, you'll never miss an episode. Thank you for being a part of our journey to create workplaces where passion meets productivity. Until next time, I'm Coach Lee. Stay engaged, stay inspired.